Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you're having a terrific summer, staying cool. This evening's guest, we have the very lovely Brian Delma Taylor. He's a Broadway veteran, an accomplished musician, actor, composer, producer. I want to welcome Brian to the show. Brian, nice to see you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. Pleasure.
How are you?
Great.
Well, thank you for coming over. You are also a Peekskill native at the moment.
Yes.
We were just talking that you're also from the city. You know, I used to live in the city as well.
Right.
So you made your way up here about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So how's life in the city these days?
In Peekskill?
Yes.
I love Peekskill. It's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. You know, after pounding the pavements for almost 31 years in New York, it's such a pleasure to wake up in the morning to beauty.
You know something, I've noticed that as well, and I have noticed that, you know, because I've lived here for about 10 years myself, and it's just so picturesque. I love being surrounded by water, and I've always had the good fortune of actually being near the water. You
Right.
know, growing up in Yonkers and then living in Manhattan.
Right.
But, you know, you grew up in Texas. So
Yes.
please do give our audience a little background on just where you're from, how you came to play, the flute. You're an accomplished flautist, so do tell.
Thank you. Sure. Well, I was born in the Midwest, Boise, Idaho, and my family moved to Denver, Colorado when I was about 5. And then when I was 8 years old, my parents encouraged me to take up a musical instrument, which is great because 8 is a little bit young in terms of the standard when they start kids on band instruments. They usually start around 10. But in the school systems in Denver, they started in the second grade, which would be 8.
Wow.
And I initially wanted to play drums, actually. And so when I posed that to my parents, they said, "No way are we going to have all of that noise in the house. Pick something else."
It is a bit daunting, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much that way. But I eventuated into the flute, and I'm really happy that I did, and I was able to drive them crazy on that anyway. So, you know.
Did you take to it naturally? Was it I know that you wanted to play the drums, but once you started to play, was it kind of a natural love affair, or was it something that you felt very comfortable with?
Not at first. Not at first, because I was actually too small to hold the instrument properly, and so I was so short that basically what as an adult, what you try to do is bring the instrument to you, which allows you to keep your shoulders level and everything. But the problem with me was that I was so short that I had to kind of hold it like this and then bring my neck around like this and practically rest the mouthpiece on my shoulders. So I played that way practically all the way through high school, and nobody bothered to tell me otherwise, you know.
Oh, goodness. So then, I know that you've had an extensive education in music. Were you a music major at the University of Texas?
Yes, I was. I actually wanted to go for my music education degree. I thought that it was a much better experience to be able to do that and just have the opportunity to teach, which education has always been a really important part of my musical life. So I was really happy that I did it, but I was also really lucky at Texas because they had a thriving jazz program in addition to the orchestras, and the band. The symphonic band was just fantastic. And of course then there was the other faction of the music program, which was the UT Longhorn Band. Now, when I was in high school, I came from marching bands, and I was actually the drum major of our marching band for 3 years. So, by the time I got to Texas, I had pretty much had it with marching bands, and for me, it was the right decision to make. I still stayed involved in it peripherally because a lot of my friends were involved in the Longhorn Band, but actually, having to wake up every Saturday morning and get ready to go and march in a football game at that stage just did not appeal to me anymore.
Right. No, I can understand that. So it was a music education major, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So was it specific to the flute? Was that going to be like what you were going to teach someone else, or was it more of a broader education?
It was a broader education. It was really all about teaching any instrument for that matter, aside from the strings. The strings were always kind of peripheral to me, the orchestral strings. That was a whole different ball game. But my experience was working and being able to at least make a good sound on virtually every band instrument. And that was great experience for me, and particularly today, because I'm one of these people who can pick up an instrument and almost make a pretty good sound on anything these days. And I attribute a lot of that just to the knowledge of how to form an embouchure, what to do with your mouth, how to hold an instrument, where all of the keys are and so forth. It was great in that respect. And it was good for me because it didn't make me focus solely and completely on the flute. That's something that never really interested me that much. My experience when I was growing up was that I was essentially, by all of my mentors and all of my teachers, I was kind of preened to be a concert flutist in an orchestra. So that appealed to me, but I found that ultimately the classical world was somewhat limiting in terms of the kinds of music I wanted to be involved in. And so the fact that I went for a music education degree, it allowed me to get my hands on all of the saxes, percussion, brass, and I can make a sound on anything now. And so I'm lucky in that respect.
No, that definitely sounds so. So I'm interested, once you decided that I guess you weren't going to be a teacher, you made your way to New York to Broadway.
Right.
So what was the plan there? What did you see yourself doing when you came to New York, and what eventually did actually happen?
Well, what eventually happened was I was accepted for private flute study with Julius Baker, who at the time was the principal flutist with the New York Philharmonic. I had attended his master class in Brewster, New York, actually during the August of 1979, which is actually when I did that. I had been told about the master class from other people, and obviously there's an audition process that you have to go through in order to even be able to attend the master class.
Right,
it was one of those
imagine.
things. So I sent in the application, you have to make a recording and so forth, and then when I was accepted for that class, I thought to myself, okay, this really feels right. This is the right timing. And prior to that, I had taught actually in the public schools in Houston and in the Galveston area in bands, in junior high school and high school band. So I was able to utilize my music education degree in that respect, but it was something that I didn't want to actually make a career out of.
Right.
I really wanted to perform, and always felt that way. So when Julius Baker accepted me for this class, it was really the perfect timing for me. And when I came, I started working with him. I didn't have any specific long-range goal because I didn't know what to expect. I'd never really been in the New York area. Somehow, as I was growing up, I always knew that I was going to end up in the Northeast, and that also was probably the best decision I ever made. I gathered up all of my worldly possessions in one of those little school vans, and I drove from San Antonio, Texas, to New York, and I never looked back.
Well, it's almost like a cliche because everyone has all these dreams. It's like, well, I'm going to move out to Los Angeles. I'm going to be an actor. Or I'm going to be an actress or something. I'm going to be in New York.
Right.
And you kind of just put all of your chips into this one little basket, or all your eggs in this one basket, and you make the most of it.
Right.
And it looks like you've been quite successful. You've been in a number of Broadway plays. Why don't you tell our audience about some of the best performances or some of the better plays? Not better, but some of your favorite.
Sure. Well, the most intense and extended performance period of time was with Miss Saigon.
Yes.
And at the time that I came on the show, they had been on Broadway actually for about 6 years. Prior to that, it was the London production, which is the one that recorded the original cast album of Miss Saigon. And so it originated there. When it came to New York, it already had an established worldwide audience, and that was a wonderful experience. Actually, interestingly enough, and this has been an ongoing issue with Broadway for a number of years, Miss Saigon at the time was the last remaining show with a full orchestra,
Oh, okay.
where it was 35 to 40 players, which back in the days of West Side Story in the 60s, that was really the standard for all of the Broadway shows. Well, as it's gone on, the orchestras have gotten smaller and smaller, and certainly with the advent of more digital sounds incorporated in the overall aspect of the sound of a Broadway show. The producer's standpoint at this stage of the game is that they can get essentially the same sound as a full orchestra,
And not have
but
to pay
just
the musicians.
not
and
have to pay the
union
musicians.
scales.
So it's been an ongoing struggle for people like myself who are journeyman musicians, and
Right.
and everybody has experienced over time this problematic thing of the orchestras just getting smaller and smaller. So by the time I arrived at Miss Saigon, it was like the last remaining full-size orchestra. I think Les Mis was the other one.
Okay.
Les Mis is now on tour with several companies, and I think it's probably maybe a third of the size. But for me, Miss Saigon was...
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Sure.
but when did that start happening? When did they start scaling down the number of musicians they had? within
started
each
happening
production?
around 1990, and prior to that, I think all of the orchestras were pretty much intact. But now the whole issue is what they call the virtual orchestra, which is essentially a bunch of guys sitting behind synthesizers. And most shows are synthesized now, and they're actually using digital samples of real instruments. So you really can't tell, or at least the person in the audience generally cannot tell the difference, which is kind of shocking to me because people who are used to being in that kind of environment in the Broadway pits miss that sound. There's nothing to replace the full sound.
Well, right. Once you know what it originally sounded like, and then
Right.
now you have kind of like these dubs and these tapes that are playing, you can
Yeah.
definitely know the difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even Radio City Music Hall, everything is automated now.
Wow.
Although Radio City still uses the same orchestra. That's part of their contract. And I've played that show many times, the Christmas Spectacular show.
That's right. So, you've got a extensive resume. You wind up coming up here to Peekskill and having a recording studio of your own,
Right.
Soundpainters.
Right.
Why don't you give us a little idea about, what's going on there and what some of your goals are with the studio?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, that the reason why I was able to pull it off here in Peekskill was it happens that I'm an artist also. I work in acrylic. So I wanted a place to be able to show my large paintings in acrylic. And my very good friend, Margaret Steele, who is an exceptional, not only exceptional musician, but she's our resident star magician here in town. And she's a world-class performer in her own right. It happened that the timing was correct for me a couple of years ago, and Margaret at the time was also contemplating moving to the Peekskill area. And she came to me and she said, "Brian, this might be a really great opportunity for you in the event that you want a change of scenery." So she said, "Why don't you come up over a weekend and let the city of Peekskill kind of show you around the place and set up some appointments to see some of the artist lofts, because the artist lofts here are spectacular." And so I said, sure. So that's exactly what I did. Back in April of 2010, I came up, I spent the weekend, and I was able to see about 6 different places. And the loft that was the last one, the 6th one, was the one that I really fell in love with. That's the one that I'm in right now. So what I decided to do was to incorporate the two things. Part of my loft is a gallery space so that the public can come and view my paintings. And the other part of it is a fully functioning multi-track recording studio, Soundpainter Studios.
Wow. So basically, these are, in my mind, because I don't really have a clear view of what that entails, having an artist loft. They are, I guess, priced for the artist, let's say.
That's right.
And the city is subsidizing this residence for the artist.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's totally awesome. I actually might need to be taking advantage of something like that.
Well, it is totally awesome. And with that in place, it's allowed some incredible artists to be coming here and thriving here. And I loved my life in New York, and I still have a lot of connections to New York City. But Peekskill is for me. It feels so much like home now.
Well, you know what I think? I mean, maybe because they are attracting artists, and there's just a really hip, cool feeling that's happening here.
Yes.
It's nice. It's nice to be a part of it. And I've been afforded the opportunity through this show to meet so many fantastic people like yourself.
Thank you.
It wasn't the first time maybe that I've met someone, but really to sit down and get to hear their story and get to hear about, you're the fabulous life you've had. You're a great musician.
Thank
You've
you.
got this going on now. And you're also acting.
Right.
So you come to Peekskill. Now 2 minutes later, you're cast as in the lead, as Daddy Robux and in Annie. Now,
Yes.
exactly how did that happen?
Okay, well, that's an interesting story because that happened totally by accident.
And I should preface this by saying that you didn't have any acting experience.
None.
And you'd never been on the stage before.
No,
Okay,
no.
so you
this
pretty
was,
much. I mean, this is go on.
yeah, it was like really jumping off a deep end. So anyway, again, my very good friend Margaret Steele
Serendipitous.
happened to be here in town, and when I first moved to Peekskill, it was in August, and the first couple of weeks I just laid low because I didn't know anybody aside from her, and so it happened that we were invited to a lot of these gatherings. There were open mic poetry readings in town. There were also events where artists within the established artist community would be able to meet and, over drinks and hors d'oeuvres and things like that. So I remember those first couple of weeks, I went to a lot of different things. And then we found out about a kind of a meet and greet poetry reading session at this place called Antonia Arts, run by Scarlett Antonia, Studio One. And so I walk in the door, and there are about 30, 40 people in there, of all different persuasions in the arts. I mean, artists, sculptors, poets, musicians, choreographers, theater directors, and so forth. And I remember walking in the door and taking my hat off. And, it must have been the look or something like that, because I was literally ascended upon by a group of people. It was a music director, a theater director, a producer, choreographer, vocal coach, all of these great local people. And we got into this conversation, and I had told him that, I'm a veteran Broadway musician and a professional singer, and have done that. And he said, well, would you ever consider auditioning for the role of Daddy Warbucks in our regional production of Annie, which is going to take place at the Paramount? And at the time, I remember having two reservations, and I said this to them. I said, first of all, I'm brand new in Peekskill, and I'm trying to get
Might
my
not have quite the box office draw.
yeah,
as some
yeah,
other
and I'm
name.
trying exactly, and I'm trying to get my recording studio business going, and that requires the appropriate amount of time, So, and then I said, my second reservation is, even though I've been a performer all of my life, I've never actually had a speaking role on stage, to say nothing of actually starring in a show. Because it's really the Warbucks character that is kind of the engine that runs everything. The Annie character obviously is extremely important as well, but the show is, in my opinion, the show is really about Warbucks and his arc. So anyway, we started talking about this a little bit, and I said, well, okay, I'll audition. When's the audition? Tomorrow.
So, did you have a monologue prepared, or was there anything that you were going to do?
Well, no, it wasn't really a monologue. They just wanted to hear me sing to make sure that I had the chops to do that.
What did you
first.
sing?
I sang "Try to Remember" from the Fantastics. I just sort of picked it out of the bag, So I came in the next day and I auditioned, and I got the part. And then for the next 3.5 months, it was nonstop rehearsals and vocal sessions, and trying to not only memorize the dialogue and work with the other actors involved, but working with the vocal coach, working to get my vocal range 2 or 3 notes higher than where my usual range is, in order to accommodate the demands of the music. And it was really important for me to be able to establish that. So I worked so hard at that. And I remember that was just one of the most intense performance experiences I've ever had, and happy beyond belief. It just made me so fulfilled.
Well, I mean, it challenged you in a way, but how nice just to kind of fall into a position like that, because it gave you an opportunity to meet some other actors and meet some other people. And that was just wonderful. I regret the fact that I didn't go see it, because I've had since that time an opportunity to hear Gabrielle Sansone.
Oh, she's amazing. She
played Annie.
Yeah, she and I have this permanent bond now. You know, whenever you work with somebody that closely on a daily basis, hopefully you'll be able to have this kind of lifelong connection, and that's Gabby. Gabby to me is an amazing talent, and her parents are wonderful too because they've just nurtured her, and her sister is very talented as well. So it's all good. But as far as acting is concerned,
You've got the bug now. I can tell that you have
I
the bug.
have, and I discovered something about myself that I did not know was there, and so I really want to take it as far as I can and go. And I'm equally in love with acting as in performing music right now.
You know, I'm a little envious at your just your enthusiasm about finding a new medium. You know, when you have all these various things that you can, you know, ways that you can express yourself.
Right.
Do you find that now you can define yourself as an actor? Is that and moving forward what you want to concentrate on and how you want to approach the rest of your career?
Well, what I found for myself as an actor is that it has allowed me as a musician to get to an even more deep place in the music, because essentially as an actor what it's done for me is it's opened up dramatic elements that that are applicable to music performance. It's just allowed me to get even closer into the inherent drama that is within music. So in that respect,
It's a deeper understanding of it.
in both cases,
A better way
yes.
to express yourself.
Right.
Believe it or not, you know, we've almost come to the end of our conversation here. You know, I want our audience, or please give our audience a way to reach you.
Sure.
Give me a quick synopsis of your next project, or a way that people can find out. Are you currently auditioning for anything, or you know, where can they catch you next?
I'm not currently auditioning for anything, but I am heavily involved in 2 CDs that are coming out. The first one is another local artist who I met through mutual people. His name is Shaka Nwenya. And Shaka is just this beautiful soul who originally comes from Zimbabwe. And he's a natural talent. He's a natural musician. He's not somebody who actually reads music, but I love working with someone like that because everything that he does is from the heart. And so when I first met him, he had this song in mind called Orphans, and what it's eventuated into is a worldwide project entitled Music for Orphans.
Now, can they find out that information on your website as well?
Yes, they can find it out on my website,
Okay.
or they can actually go to the worldwide website, which is Music #4 Orphans. So that's all you have to do. You can Google it. You can get straight on the site, and you can find out exactly what it is. And it happens that through our song Orphans, which is now completely produced with a number of wonderful, well-known, world-class musicians from all over the place, but it's the direct link to an organization that has been set up called Music for Orphans, and our idea is to have worldwide attention to the orphan situation, not only in Zimbabwe, but other parts of South Africa, and then we're going to start from there. We're actually going to take a sojourn into that part of the world, do a series of concerts, and set up clinics.
Okay, so now quickly give us your email, or not your
Sure.
email, your website information.
Yes, my website is www.soundpainterstudios, that's all one word, .com, soundpainterstudios.com.
So we're definitely going to have you back.
Thank you.
The time went by way too quickly.
Yes.
You know, as we roll out, Brian is going to be playing The World at Play. He's going to be playing the flute along, and he just sounds wonderful. He's a wonderful talent. I'm glad that we had a chance to sit down and speak with him. I want everybody to go to our website. It's www.livingartsinwestchester.com. Visit us on YouTube, Living Arts in Westchester. You know, as always, thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to be here with you, to introduce you to Brian. Hope to see you soon. Peace.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Delma Taylor. I'm a resident artist here in Peekskill, New York, and I'm going to be performing 2 original pieces for you tonight. The first piece was composed, arranged, and produced in Soundpainter Studios right here in Peekskill. It's called The World at Play.